Why do women crave being desired, not just loved, but wanted in a world that celebrates independence and self sufficiency? The longing to feel desired still runs deep. This documentary explores the psychology behind that need, peeling back layers of attraction, validation, and emotional intimacy. Through real stories, expert insights, and candid conversations, we dive into what it truly means for women to feel seen, chosen, and desired. Because wanting to be wanted isn't weakness, it's human. It's a simple phrase, but it carries an entire world inside it. I want to be wanted. When women say this, or even just feel it quietly inside, it's not about vanity. It's not even about attention. It's about something far deeper, almost primal. It's about being seen in a way that feels real, intimate, and affirming. And interestingly, the science of sex and psychology tells us this desire isn't superficial at all. It's a reflection of how human connection works at its most biological and emotional levels. Now, I've spent years studying human sexuality, why we're attracted to who we're attracted to, what our fantasies mean, and how our emotions influence desire. And over time, one theme has shown up again and again, especially in women's stories, the craving not just to be loved, but to be wanted, desired in that unmistakable, magnetic, ice can't leave you way that says, you specifically, you are the one. We often assume that men are the ones who prioritize sexual desire, who want to be the pursuers, the ones driven by visual cues and instinct. But research shows that women's sexual psychology is just as driven by the need to be desired. In one of my studies on sexual fantasies, the overwhelming majority of women described scenarios not where they were chasing someone, but where someone was irresistibly drawn to them. There's a key psychological reason for that. It's about visibility. You see, being desired is about being seen. And for many women, that sense of being seen, really seen, is intertwined with their identity, confidence, and even their sense of safety. In relationships, women often carry the emotional labor they nurture, they care, they support. But being wanted flips that dynamic. It reminds them that they are not just the giver, they are also the one who can ignite passion simply by existing. There's something biologically ancient about this. Evolutionarily, desire served a purpose. Attraction was a survival mechanism. To be desired was to be chosen, and being chosen often meant safety, protection, and the continuation of one's genetic line. Today, that instinct still lingers, but it's translated into emotional language. When a woman says she wants to be wanted, she's really saying, I want to feel chosen in a world that constantly asks me to prove my worth. Think about that for a moment. Society tells women to be perfect, to look a certain way, act a certain way, even desire in a certain way. And when they do, the message still often comes back mixed. Be confident, but not too confident. Be sexy, but not too sexual. Be open, but not too vulnerable. It's exhausting. So when a woman feels genuinely desired without expectation or judgment, something inside her unlocks. It's like a mirror suddenly turning on and reflecting back all the parts of her that the world has overlooked. That's not just erotic, that's healing. Let me give you an example. In one interview, a woman in her 30s described how after years of being in a relationship where she felt invisible, she suddenly met someone who made her feel wanted again, not in an overly sexual way, but in a deeply attentive way, someone who noticed her laugh, her energy, her quirks. She told me, it wasn't about him touching me. It was the way he looked at me, like I was the only person in the room. I hadn't felt that in years. Psychologically, that experience activates something powerful. It lights up the same neural reward centers as pleasure, as affirmation, as love. Desire, in this sense, becomes emotional oxygen. And women, who are often socialized to be caretakers, rarely get to breathe that oxygen fully. Now, here's where it gets interesting from a scientific standpoint. Studies using functional MRI scans have shown that when women feel desired, when they receive genuine sexual or romantic attention, their brains show increased activity in regions associated with reward empathy and body awareness. That means being wanted literally changes how a woman experiences her own body. It sharpens sensation, heightens emotion, and deepens connection. It's like her nervous system saying, I exist and I matter. But of course, this isn't just about sex. It's about intimacy, the emotional and psychological space that sex lives in. When desire is authentic, it communicates, I see you. I choose you. You don't have to perform or prove anything. That's what makes it so intoxicating. For men, desire can sometimes be more external, triggered by visual cues or novelty. But for many women, it's profoundly relational. It's about who is seeing them and how they are being seen. In fact, research by psychologist Marta Miana suggests that female arousal is often driven more by the feeling of being desired than by the act of desiring. That's not to say women don't want sex or pursue it. They do. But the emotional meaning behind desire often carries more weight than the act itself. So when we talk about female confidence, We can't ignore this link. Feeling desired isn't about seeking validation, it's about resonance. When someone wants you in a way that feels real, it reinforces your sense of self. Confidence then becomes not just something you project, but something reflected back to you. That's one reason why, in long term relationships, when desire fades, confidence sometimes does too. Many women report feeling less attractive or even less alive when their partners stop showing sexual or emotional interest. And it's not vanity, it's biology. Our brains interpret attention as affirmation. Without it, we can start questioning our worth, even if logically we know better. It's also why small gestures can mean everything. A glance across a crowded room, a hand on the back, a compliment that feels sincere rather than scripted. These moments reignite the psychological spark of being wanted. It's not the act, it's the energy. But let's dig deeper. Why does this matter so much, even for women who are independent, confident, and sexually self assured? Because being desired doesn't cancel independence, it complements it. It reminds us that vulnerability and strength can coexist. There's a fascinating paradox in female psychology. Many women report feeling most powerful in moments when they are desired, not because someone else holds the power, but because their desirability becomes a kind of expression, a language of embodiment. It's a way of saying, I can be both sensual and strong, both wanted and in control. In my research on fantasies, one of the most common themes among women was being pursued, not dominated, not objectified, but pursued in a way that feels emotionally charged. These fantasies often blend power and tenderness, a sense that someone can't help but want them, and that the desire is born out of admiration, not possession. It's the fantasy of being undeniable. And that's what's so psychologically fascinating about female desire. It thrives in the balance between surrender and agency. Being wanted doesn't mean being passive, it means being magnetic. It's about evoking desire without having to chase it. This is also why confidence and desirability feed each other in a feedback loop. When a woman feels desired, she becomes more confident. When she feels confident, she exudes an energy that draws more desire. It's not magic, it's mirror neurons. Humans are wired to respond to emotion and energy. When you feel desirable, you project cues, subtle body language, tone of voice, eye contact that invite connection. Desire literally begets desire. Now, let's touch on a subtle but important truth. Not all forms of being wanted feel good. Many women have experienced unwanted attention that feels invasive or dehumanizing. That's not desire, that's entitlement. Authentic desire is about mutual recognition, not control. It's about wanting someone for who they are, not what they can give you. That's why when genuine desire shows up, it feels so electric. It's rooted in respect. This difference is critical because the kind of wanting that makes women feel empowered isn't about being seen as an object. It's about being seen as a subject, as a person who elicits longing because of her essence, her presence, her energy. When that happens, desire becomes affirming instead of diminishing. Let's think about how this plays out in modern life. In the age of social media, where validation often comes in likes and follows, the craving to be wanted has been hijacked by digital attention. But digital validation rarely satisfies the deeper craving. Like says, I noticed you. True desire says, I feel you. There's a world of difference between the two. Women, in particular, navigate this every day. They're surrounded by images that tell them how to be desirable, but almost never how to feel desired. And that's why this topic matters. Because when a woman reconnects with her own sense of being wanted, not through approval, but through genuine connection, it transforms her experience of intimacy entirely. Think of a time when you felt someone's desire without a single word being spoken. The look in their eyes, the subtle tension in the air, that's the language of want. It's primal, yes, but it's also deeply human. That moment says, you don't have to do anything. You already are everything. What's even more fascinating is how this plays out hormonally. Desire, especially when mutual, increases dopamine and oxytocin levels, the same chemicals linked to pleasure and bonding. So when a woman feels desired, her brain literally creates a biochemical cocktail that amplifies trust, closeness, and emotional warmth. Desire then becomes not just an erotic experience, but a physiological bridge between two people. That bridge can be fragile, though. In many relationships, life takes over. Routine, stress, parenthood, exhaustion, they all dull the spark. But the longing to be wanted doesn't disappear. It just goes quiet, waiting for a signal. Sometimes that signal can be as small as curiosity, partners asking each other, what makes you feel desired? Because desire is not static, it's relational, it evolves with time. Here's something most people don't realize in long-term love. Desire doesn't fade because attraction disappears. It fades because visibility does. We stop seeing our partners as mysteries to be discovered and start seeing them as routines to be managed. But desire thrives on discovery. When we show our partners that we still see them, we bring that spark back to life. For women, that often means moments of being noticed for who they've become, not just who they were. It's about acknowledgement, seeing the evolution, the newness, the depth. That's how desire stays alive. So when women say, I want to be wanted, they're not talking about ego, they're talking about emotional truth. They're saying, I want to know that I still matter in your eyes, that you still see me through the lens of possibility, not familiarity. And that's where the real power lies. Because when women feel wanted, it's not just about attraction, it's about awakening. It reignites a part of them that remembers how powerful it feels to exist fully in their own body. Desire becomes not just something they receive, but something they radiate at its core. This is about connection. True desire, the kind that lights up both the body and the brain, isn't about chasing or earning. It's about recognition. The recognition that says, I see your complexity, I see your beauty, and I still can't look away. Maybe that's the most human truth of all. To be wanted is to feel alive. It's to know that someone somewhere looks at you and sees something worth desiring, not because you're flawless, but because you're real. And perhaps that's what women mean deep down when they say they want to be wanted. They're not asking to be placed on a pedestal, they're asking to be seen in their fullness, strong, soft, messy, radiant, real. Because when desire meets authenticity, something extraordinary happens. It stops being a performance and becomes a connection. That's the quiet magic of human intimacy. It's not about power, it's about presence. And maybe in the end, that's what every woman and really every person wants: to feel visible, to feel chosen, to feel wanted, not for the image they present, but for the soul they reveal. That's not just sexual psychology. That's the story of being human. It's one of the most misunderstood desires in human psychology, the need to be wanted. People often mistake it for ego or assume it's about insecurity. But when you look at it through the lens of sexual science and psychology, something much deeper and far more universal emerges. When women say they want to be desired, they're not asking for validation. They're expressing one of the most primal and emotionally intelligent instincts we have as human beings: the need for connection, for emotional safety, and for the feeling of being worthy of love. We've been taught to separate sex from emotion, lust from love, desire from connection. But the truth is, they're all deeply intertwined. In my years of researching sexual fantasies and human behavior, I've seen this again and again. Women's desire to be wanted isn't about being objectified, it's about being seen as someone worth wanting. It's a signal of belonging, a biological and psychological echo of our evolution. It tells the brain, I'm safe here, I matter. To understand this, we have to go back to our wiring. From an evolutionary standpoint, being wanted wasn't just a nice feeling, it was survival. Being chosen meant protection, resources, partnership. It meant your genes continued, your offspring thrived. Over thousands of generations, the emotional meaning of desire became deeply coded into our biology. But here's the fascinating part: it didn't stay just about survival. Desire evolved into something more complex, something deeply emotional. Today, when a woman feels genuinely wanted, her brain interprets that as a cue of safety and belonging. Neuroimaging studies show that feelings of sexual attraction and an emotional validation activate some of the same regions in the brain. The amygdala, the hypothalamus, and the nucleus accumbens, which is part of the brain's reward system. That means that being desired and being loved light up similar circuits. The body doesn't necessarily distinguish between them. It experiences both as warmth, reward, and pleasure. This is why the longing to be wanted can feel so powerful. It's not just psychological, it's chemical. When someone looks at you with genuine desire, your brain releases dopamine, the neurotransmitter associated with pleasure and anticipation. Add a sense of emotional connection, and you get a surge of oxytocin, the bonding hormone. Together, these chemicals create a cocktail that can make you feel euphoric, grounded, and secure all at once. It's not about ego, it's about biology doing exactly what it was designed to do. But it's also about psychology. Women, more than men, are often socialized to suppress their sexual needs, to prioritize emotional caretaking over being cared for. And yet, under the surface, their desire is deeply intertwined with feeling seen, pursued, and appreciated. It's why so many women describe the most arousing moments not as physical acts, but as psychological ones: a certain look, an unexpected compliment, a hand reaching for theirs in public. These moments are small, but they're powerful signals of being desired. And the science supports this. In studies on sexual arousal, women report that feeling desired increases their physiological responses: heart rate, blood flow, and even lubrication, far more effectively than purely visual stimuli. That's because female desire is context driven. It's less about what they see and more about what they feel. When a woman senses that someone genuinely wants her, not for performance, not for appearance, but for essence, her body responds accordingly. Let's take a common example: long-term relationships. Over time, desire often fades, not because love is gone, but because novelty and attention wane. Partners stop expressing want, and that absence can feel like emotional silence. Women often describe it as a slow erosion of aliveness. I don't need to be adored. One woman told me during an interview, I just want to know that he still sees me, that I can still make his heart skip. That simple acknowledgement, the awareness that she's still wanted, is a potent source of both confidence and connection. What's remarkable is that when couples rekindle desire, they often rediscover intimacy because feeling desired makes you more open. It lowers defenses, heightens trust, and strengthens communication. It's a feedback loop. Desire fuels closeness, and closeness deepens desire. The two are not separate forces. They feed one another in a dance that's as emotional as it is erotic. Now, let's pause here for a moment and look at this through a psychological lens. The longing to be wanted isn't a weakness, it's a reflection of our attachment systems. From birth, humans are wired to seek signals of care and safety. Babies cry not just for food, but for touch, for attention. As adults, those needs don't disappear, they just evolve. Instead of crying for touch, we crave recognition. Instead of seeking safety in arms, we seek it in eyes that see us, in voices that affirm us, in partners who reach for us with genuine longing. That's why the desire to be wanted isn't superficial, it's deeply human. It's an adult expression of the same need that once kept us alive, the need to be chosen, to be prioritized, to be loved in a way that feels secure and whole. Interestingly, this need also shapes how we express sexuality. Many women describe feeling their most confident, their most alive when they feel desired. It's not that they depend on someone else for validation, it's that being wanted reflects back a part of themselves that society often tells them to hide. Sexuality, after all, has long been a space of shame and silence for women. Being desired in a way that feels safe and mutual becomes a reclamation of power. It's saying, I can be both sensual and strong. I can be wanted and still in control. And this isn't just emotional language, it's physiological truth. When women feel genuinely desired, their brains release nitric oxide, a chemical that promotes relaxation and increases blood flow. That same response also lowers cortisol, the stress hormone. In other words, being wanted literally makes the body feel safer. It's as though the body itself recognizes, I am secure here, I can open up. That's why authentic desire can be so transformative. It doesn't just arouse, it heals. It creates a space where women can inhabit their bodies fully without fear or judgment. And that, in turn, strengthens emotional intimacy. The bridge between body and mind becomes seamless, and sex becomes more than an act, it becomes communication. But here's where it gets tricky. In a culture obsessed with surface level attention, likes, follows, digital validation, the deeper experience of being wanted is harder to find. We live in an era of visibility, but not necessarily connection. Someone can want your image without wanting you. And that disconnect can leave women feeling emptier than before. The body may be admired, but the soul remains untouched. Real desire doesn't objectify, it recognizes, it doesn't consume, it connects. And this difference is everything, because when women feel wanted for their presence rather than performance, desire becomes emotionally nourishing instead of draining. I once interviewed a woman who told me something that stayed with me for years. She said, the sexiest thing a man ever said to me wasn't a line. It was when he looked at me and said, I see you. That moment of recognition, she said, made her feel safe enough to be vulnerable, playful, and free. Her arousal wasn't just physical, it was emotional alignment. Her body responded because her mind finally felt seen. There's a deep truth in that. Sexual psychology isn't just about what turns us on, it's about what makes us open up. For women, the doorway to arousal often passes through emotional trust. Feeling desired creates that trust. It tells the brain it's okay to let go. That's when desire transforms from performance to pleasure. The irony, of course, is that many women internalize guilt around wanting to be wanted. They worry it sounds needy or that it diminishes their independence. But in reality, it's the opposite. Acknowledging that desire, owning it, is a form of self-awareness. It's saying, I know what makes me feel alive and I'm not ashamed of it. That's strength. That's sexual intelligence. And from a scientific point of view, the body rewards that kind of self-awareness. Studies show that women who embrace their own sexuality, who allow themselves to feel desired, report higher levels of self-esteem, lower levels of anxiety, and stronger emotional resilience. Their relationships tend to be more fulfilling too. Why? Because being wanted reminds them of their worth, and that confidence radiates into every part of life. It's also worth noting that men experience something similar, but differently. While many men associate being wanted with physical admiration, women often associate it with emotional attunement. When someone listens deeply, pays attention, remembers small details, that's erotic too. Female desire thrives in the space between attention and affection. It's a form of psychological seduction. This is why foreplay for women often begins long before the bedroom. It's in the messages exchanged during the day, the tone of voice during dinner, The look that lingers a second longer than necessary. Each small gesture tells the nervous system you are safe to want and safe to be wanted. By the time the body responds physically, the mind has already been seduced. And this brings us to an important realization: being wanted is not the opposite of empowerment, it's part of it. When desire is mutual and respectful, it affirms autonomy rather than threatening it. It says, you are free to choose, and I still choose you. That's one of the most powerful experiences any human can have, to be chosen freely, not out of need, but out of genuine want. So, what happens when that's missing? When women don't feel desired, even in loving relationships, a quiet disconnection begins to grow. It's not about sex, it's about visibility. Without the spark of being wanted, emotional intimacy can feel incomplete. The body can be touched, but the self feels unseen. And that, more than anything, is what erodes connection over time. But the good news is that desire can be rekindled, because the longing to be wanted never disappears. It just waits for attention. It waits for curiosity. And curiosity is the lifeblood of desire. When partners start asking questions again, when they explore what makes each other feel desired, they begin to rebuild the emotional and biological rhythms of connection. What's fascinating is that this process doesn't take grand gestures. Sometimes it's as simple as slowing down, looking longer, listening deeper, expressing genuine appreciation, not just for what someone does, but for who they are. The smallest acknowledgments can reawaken the body's chemistry of desire. At the end of the day, being wanted is one of the most human experiences there is. It's not about dominance or submission, not about gender roles or performance. It's about recognition. The moment someone looks at you and says, through touch, through eyes, through energy, I see your worth. I feel your presence. I want you. That's what creates emotional safety. That's what fuels desire that lasts, because when women feel wanted in this way, it's not just the body that responds, it's the mind, the heart, the entire nervous system. It's the body remembering what it means to feel at home in itself. So when we talk about why women want to be wanted, we're not talking about vanity. We're talking about the very architecture of connection, the way the brain, body, and heart synchronize when someone's desire meets our sense of worth. It's biology, psychology, it's chemistry, and it's deeply, profoundly human. In the end, wanting to be wanted isn't a weakness. It's an expression of emotional intelligence. It's the body's way of saying, I'm alive, I'm open, I'm ready to connect. And in a world that often rushes past real intimacy, that's not just a desire. It's a form of courage, because being wanted reminds us of something fundamental: that we are not just bodies moving through space. We are beings wired for connection, wired to feel, wired to love, and yes, wired to want and be wanted. And maybe in that mutual wanting, we find the closest thing we have to wholeness.